Hi guys, I'm Sarah Westbrook. I'm a yoga therapist. I teach Align and Refine classes Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I'm here to help you understand whether or not you need to sit up on some height. So when you first start a class, your teacher will often tell you, if you need to, sit up on some height. And of course, you don't want to need to. So usually you won't use it, right? Because you'll feel like even if your knees are high and you're stiff and tight, that like just by not using that prop, you're going to like force your body to adapt to the shape. Now, if you've been trying that for a few years and your knees are still high, you probably have a structural difference in your hips that makes sitting cross-legged and other externally rotated poses quite difficult for your hips. So instead of fighting it, I suggest that you come to a kneeling position and place a block underneath your butt if that makes the knees more comfortable. And when you're seated on the block is used both to not overly squeeze and compress the knees, but a little bit of height can help you get to neutral pelvis. So what's neutral pelvis? Who knows, right? Teacher's like, sit in neutral pelvis, neutral spine. You're like, I don't know. How would I ever know that? So we use bony landmarks to figure that out. So you have these hip points in front, and then you have your pubic bone here in front. And when your hip points are further back and your pubic bone is further forward, you're tucking. And another way to feel that is to take your hands to your low back, and you'll feel that the bony knobs of your vertebrae are pushed out backwards. So push into your hands or your fingertips and bring yourself back upright. Now those bony knobs have moved into the body and they're not sticking out behind you. And if you look down, your pubic bone and your hip points are on the same plane. This is great. Why? This is great to help the body come back to the most optimal state for supporting your pelvic organs and for breathing. So let's test that out. Sort of rock back to your tailbone and let the abdominal shorten and the low back stretches, and go ahead and take some breaths here. Feel where the breath goes. And because the breath pushes the belly out and then back, you might feel, well, I'm belly breathing, so that's good. But the breath isn't going anywhere else. It's probably not reaching the pelvic floor or the pelvic bowl, and it's not moving your ribs at all. So now push down into your hands, come up to vertical, and pubic bone, hip points on the same plane, natural arch in the low back, and then feel your breath. And we want to feel the breath go all the way down. And if you're sitting on a block, it can be helpful because you can feel the breath move in contact to the pelvic floor. You can feel that the breath moves the ribs, that the breath is penetrating the throat all the way down to the pelvic floor uniformly on all planes. That's what we want. Now, the flexible student, right, who, kneeling or cross-legged, will sometimes take support sitting up on a blanket, even if they don't need it, because they feel like it's the right thing to do. But when the overly flexible student takes this position, they end out with the hip points almost touching the front of the right thigh. So when you find those bony knobs, you can see how close are they to the thigh skin. If they're resting on the thigh or even pushing in, that's too far. So zip up the belly. You can even take the hands to the pubic bone and pull the pubic bone skin up until the hip points and the pubic bone are level, and there's space between the hip point and the top of the thigh. That's neutral pelvis. If you persist in this excessive tilt, which the blanket's helping that happen. That's why you sit on the forward edge and you clear the buttocks, and that tilts the pelvis, the top of the pelvis forward. And for the flexible people, it will push the ribs forward. Go ahead and give it breathing a try in this position. And what you'll notice is when the ribs are very forward and the pelvis is tilted too far forward, the breath doesn't even get below the rib cage. The breath is great in the ribs, it's full in the chest, but it's not getting as low as it needs to go. So again, push back, zip up, Find that tone, get rid of the blanket. You don't need it. And then enjoy the breath as it fully goes all the way down to the pelvic floor. So I hope this tutorial has helped make sense of when you need to use a blanket or a block or not, and when you need to just go to kneeling instead of trying to force yourself to sit cross-legged. There's no magic to any of these yoga poses. There's no magic to sitting cross-legged. There's no magic even in lotus pose, unfortunately. Right? So learn to make the practice work for you. Stop fighting your body and stop doing unnecessary things that actually work against you. So this is what we figure out in the Align and Refine practice. I hope you can join me Mondays and Fridays at 9:30. You sign up through yogaview.com. And then try joining me on Saturday, where you'll get a recording of the practice. So on Saturdays, to sign up for that 10 a.m. class, you go to my website, yogatherapywithsarah.com. And when you register there, even if you can't join me live at 10 a.m., anyone who registers gets access to the recording. Thanks again, guys. Namaste.